What's up YouTube? Eric Vasquez here from Teach Me to Design. And today I've got a brand new video for you where I'm going to show you how to blur backgrounds in Photoshop like a pro. Now in the past, a lot of people may just go ahead and slap a Gaussian blur on their background and call it a day. But in this video, I'm going to show you a much more efficient way to do this so that you can maximize your control over any image that you want to work with in Photoshop. So before we get into it, please go ahead and smash that like button and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Now let's jump into Photoshop and get started. So to start things off, we're going to open up the free image from Pexels inside of Photoshop. And I've put a link to this image in the description below so that you can easily follow along with this tutorial. Now, the first thing we're going to do is grab the background layer and press Command J to duplicate it. Now, once you've done that, we're going to go ahead and turn off the visibility of the background layer. Now, what I like to do here is to first isolate the subject, right? So I want to just use the lasso tool and get kind of a crude selection around this guy here who's just walking in front of this building. And once you've done that, go ahead and press Command J to duplicate this selection onto a new layer. Now, disable the visibility of the layer below so that you're left with just this rough selection of the guy. Now, go ahead and press W on the keyboard, and then up here where it says Select Subject, I'm going to click on this drop-down menu, choose Cloud, Detailed Results, and then click Select Subject. And this is going to let Photoshop do most of the hard work for you by creating a pretty decent selection. Now, once you've done that, go ahead and click on the Layer Mask icon at the bottom of the Layers palette, and you've got a pretty good selection here of this guy. So the only problem with this is that we've lost the shadows here from the original image. So what I'm going to do is zoom in, and I'm going to go ahead and press P on the keyboard to just trace this shadow here under the shoe, just like so. And I'm just using the handles here to modify the curves and follow the shadow shape. And then we'll do the same thing for this other shape here, just so we can trace around it. All right, and then once you've got this selection made, go ahead and close the path, press Command and Enter on the keyboard, and with this middle layer selected, go ahead and press Command J once again to add that selection to a new layer. So now you'll see that you have the shadows on a layer of their own. Now from here, I'm going to go ahead and rename this layer Shadows, convert it to a smart object, and I'll do the same for the layer above. I'll call this layer Silo, hold the Control key and click on the layer and then choose Convert to Smart Object. This will just allow us to scale the image if we need to without losing any quality. All right, so now we basically have a silhouette, our shadows, a copy of the background layer, and our original background layer. So what I'd like to do now is try and separate things a bit more. So with our silo layer and our shadows turned off, I'm basically going to create a selection again around the guy here. Okay, and if you've seen my old tutorial on removing reflections in Photoshop, I'm using a very similar technique here. All right, so I'm going to use the lasso tool, create a selection, go to the Select menu and choose Save Selection. I'll call this Wall Fix, save it, press Command D to deselect, and now I'm just going to grab a big chunk of this wall here where there's nothing really in front of it. All right, I'll go over this fence shadow, close this selection here, and press Command C to copy it. Now Command D to deselect. I'll return to the Select menu and this time choose Load Selection. From the Channel drop-down, choose Wall Fix, which is the selection we saved before. Click OK, and it's now going to activate the selection here. So what we're going to do next is go to the Edit menu, choose Paste Special, Paste Into. And now you'll see over here in your Layers palette, you've got a new layer with that chunk of wall on it, and you also have a layer mask around the selection. But there's no link in between the actual piece of wall and the mask, which is just what we want. So using the Move tool, V on the keyboard, you can now press Command T and you can move this selection around until the wall is filling in this whole shape here. Something like that. Then I'll press Return on the keyboard to apply the changes. Now, I know this isn't perfect. You can still see the edges here, but one thing you can do is use a soft round brush set to a low opacity setting with a solid black fill And you can just kind of brush around the edges a little bit if you want to fade them. But beware that it might start to show the image that we're actually trying to hide. So we'll come back to this in a minute. Now for the rest of this image, we're going to apply the same kind of approach here. So I'm going to use the lasso tool again to just create a selection around the areas where I want to hide. Go ahead and close the shape, go to select, save the selection again. This time I will call it curb fix. Okay, and now I'm going to grab a piece of this curb here where there's no, leg in front of it. I'll grab a little bit of the wall too, just for good measure. Press Command C to copy it, Command D to deselect. Go to the select menu and choose load selection. Go to the channel drop down and choose curb fix. Click OK. Go to the edit menu and choose paste special, paste into. Now just like before, you can press Command T to move this chunk of curb around just enough to cover up the legs. And we're going to go ahead and click on that link between the mask and the object here and do the same thing for the layer above. Now all we need to do is hide this portion of the street. So what I'm going to do is just focus on the shoes. So use the lasso tool once again, and this is the polygonal lasso tool. And I'm just going to create a selection around the feet. Same deal here, go to the select menu, choose save selection, and we will call it feet fix. All right, and now I'm going to just create another selection here to grab a piece of the street that is, not covered by the feet. And if you want to add to it, just hold the shift key and add to your selection so you can get a little bit more there. All right, and then we should be able to press Command C to copy it, Command D to deselect, return to the select menu, choose load selection, go to the channel dropdown and choose feet fix, click OK, and then edit, paste special, paste into. So we can press Command T once again to do a free transform here. And we're just looking to cover the feet. It doesn't have to be perfect because there is one more step we're going to do to clean this up. But we've done a pretty decent job here of just kind of getting rid of the guy so that we just are left with this back plate. So what I'm going to do now is select the top layer here, which is the wall, hold the shift key, and come down here and select the copy of my image just above the background layer. And I'll press Command E to merge that all together. Now we'll press Command J to make a copy of it, turn off the visibility of the layer below, and then press S on the keyboard to get your clone stamp tool. Now, when I'm using the clone stamp tool, I like to use current layer, but you can also do, current and below. But if I do current and below, I don't want to also sample, from the original image, any parts of the guy that we're actually trying to get rid of. So for now, I'm just going to use current layer. I'll explain this a little bit more in another video, but for now, just use that setting for this. Okay, and all I'm going to do is hold the Alt Option key, select a part of the wall that I want to use as a source, and then with a soft round brush, I'm just going to click down after sampling each time. So I'm holding Alt Option, clicking to sample, and then clicking a few times to cover up any hard edges or lines that I want to get rid of. So this is why I wasn't too concerned with, being perfectly precise in the beginning. Now I'm going to do the same thing and just cover up this little section of the street here. And we'll also do that to get rid of the shadows since we have them on a separate layer already. All right, but in just a few minutes, we've created a nice backplate for ourselves so that we can start to blur this background and really have more control over it. All right, and I'll grab a little section of the curb here, clean up the wall just for good measure. All right, and then I'm just going to merge that with the layer below. We no longer need that extra copy. So we have our original, and we now have the back plate. And above that, we've got shadows and the silo by itself. So we've started off just by breaking these things into different layers. And by separating them, it allows us to isolate each of these elements individually, which really gives us a lot more control. Speaking of control, hold the Control key, click on this background plate, and convert it to a smart object. I'm going to call it BG plate. And now, like I said, what a lot of people do, myself included at one point, if I wanted to blur the background, is I would typically just come up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And you can play with these settings and sure, it's fine, but it doesn't really look natural. And when you think about, real photos and cameras and even the way that our eyes actually work, not everything is equally blurred all at the same time. So I don't want to use that approach. What I will do instead is further chop this up a little bit more. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to press W on the keyboard and make sure that I have my object selection tool selected. I'll use my hand to come up here, just navigate to the top. And all I'm looking to do is to sort of isolate this building here. All right, so I'm selecting around this, and I want to grab the curb as well, but I can just add to this selection with my pen tool. Okay, and then go ahead and cut into that shape, press Command and Enter. Oops, I lost my first selection there, so hold Shift and press W, and then select the building. So I've now got the building as well as that section, that slab of curb there. Now with your BG plate selected, click on the layer mask icon at the bottom of the layers palette, turn off the original background layer so that you can see what we're doing here. We've got the building and the curb by itself. Now we're going to make another copy of the background plate and remove the layer mask. So hold Control, click on the mask and choose Delete Mask. And from here, what I'm going to do is select this whole background here, basically from the street up until the top of the image. All right, and it's okay if you cut into the building a little bit, but once you've closed the path, press Command and Return to activate the selection. Click on the layer mask icon again, and then just move this down below the building layer. All right, so you now have this section on the side here isolated as well. All right, we're going to make one more copy here, delete the layer mask, and what we're going to do is move it to the top for a second just so we can see what we're doing. And this part actually should be pretty easy because we've already got two layer masks that we can use. So I'm going to hold the Command key or Control on a PC, click on the layer mask icon of the BG plate layer, and you'll see that activate a selection around your building. Then hold Command and Shift and click on the layer thumbnail icon for the other side, the other selection that we have in the layer below. So you've now got everything selected except for the street. Now press Command Shift I to invert that selection, and on your new copy at the top here, add a layer mask. And you'll see that we now have the street isolated and by itself. Okay, so we basically started with our nice clean image. We got our background plate and everything set up, and we just broke it up even further into these chunks here. So you should now have these same 5 layers. So what I'm going to do is hold the Shift key, select the BG plate layer, and then select the Silo layer on top, press Command G to put them into a folder, and I'll just call this After. Turn on my background layer here and double click it, and then we'll call this Before. I'll double click on the text here, press Command C, then Command G to put it into a folder, double click and paste the layer name, and now you shouldn't really see much of a difference here with the before and after just yet, but we're about to make some impact here. We're going to make some changes. So what I'm going to do is just rename each of these background layers. I'll call this first one Street. Second one will be Building. And the third one will be Background. So what we're going to do now is select the Background Smart Object layer, come up to the Filter menu, and now you can apply a Gaussian blur and see how it looks. Right? It's not so bad because we're not applying it to our entire image evenly. We're isolating an area of the image that we want to apply the blur to very intentionally. All right, so you can see I'm adding a little bit of blur there. Around 8 pixels or so, looks pretty good. So I'll click OK. Now for the other 2 sections of our background plate, the building and the street, we want to take a slightly different approach. Now here's the fun part, and this is the blur filter that I like to use most often in my work. I'll select the building smart object, go to the filter menu, blur gallery, and then choose field blur. Now you should see this nice point in the middle of your image, but what's great about this is that you can actually move this point around and place it anywhere you want. So we're just looking at the building right now, and I'm going to place this first point somewhere down here towards the bottom right, just behind the guy's legs, and I'm going to click and drag my mouse until the blur is set to around 3. So it's very minimal. But what's nice is I can now click and create another point somewhere to the left of that, and also apply a low blur setting. Or if you want to, you can crank this up and it's not going to affect that first pin that we created. So see over here on the right, it's still pretty sharp, but on the left side, you've now got a heavier, more deliberate looking blur, right? And you can see it if I crank that way up, what's happening, right? But this area on the bottom still looks pretty good, right? So let's go ahead and apply a blur setting of maybe around 10, a little bit higher up from our first point. And then I'll create a third point up here near the top of the image, and I'll crank this up a little bit more, maybe to around, let's see, maybe 18, a little bit less, maybe 15 looks pretty good. So this allows you to pinpoint the exact areas that you want to apply a very controlled, deliberate blur to. So now go ahead and click OK to apply that change. And we've just got our street to deal with. So I'm going to do the same thing, select the street smart object, go to Blur Gallery and choose Field Blur. And again, I'll create a point somewhere here towards the background where it attaches to the fence or that wall back there. And I'm going to apply a blur of around 12, maybe a little more, maybe 14 looks pretty good. And then I'm going to apply a second pin somewhere here closer to the guy and then lower it so it's sharper here, okay, maybe around 2 or 3. And then we won't have any blur at all here in the bottom right corner. Now click OK and apply those changes. So now you can see, if I turn on the visibility of the before folder, you can see the before and after. In the before, everything was pretty sharp, which is fine, but if we want to apply some deliberate intentional blurring to our image, this is a great way to do it. And the reason why this is so effective is, again, you saw in the beginning when we applied the Gaussian blur over the whole thing, it didn't really look that good. But when you do it this way, you chop up and you isolate your objects and you use the blur intentionally, you can get a much more professional looking result. Okay, and the nice thing about this is the fact that we're working non-destructively. These are all smart objects with smart filters applied, meaning that at any point I can come back in here, double click on the filter, and I can change those settings, right? So if I want to reduce that Gaussian blur that's only on the background, it's really easy to do. Right? Or if I want to increase it, not too much, I mean, that's not going to look very good, but you can come back in here and play with these settings as much as you want. And it just allows you to really focus and concentrate on certain areas. So play around with the field blur. It's a really useful tool. This is the process and the way that I go about blurring backgrounds in my images. Anytime that I'm working on a design, whether it's a poster, a flyer, or anything like that, any kind of compositing work, this is going to be a really useful workflow for you. And I actually talked about this a little bit in another recent video where I was discussing 5 secrets to great poster designs. If you watch that video, then you'll know that one of my tips is that sort of deliberate blurring, deliberate sharpening throughout the image. So I hope that you found this tutorial to be helpful today, and I hope that you can apply some of these things in your own work. If you did find it useful, again, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and click that notification bell so you never miss a video. All right, thank you so much for watching and for joining me today. My name is Eric Vasquez, here for Teach Me to Design, and we'll see you next time.